Look who has joined us. Thank God somebody came in and cut Zach off in the middle of a Chris Jericho bit. The head of C4 Wrestling, Mark Pollesel, joining us live on This Is Wrestling. How about this, Mark? How you doing?
Sorry it's taking me so long, but I'm glad to be here, and thanks for nailing me down today. I'm very glad to join you guys.
I tell people I pull the curtain. We like to pull the curtain back a little bit on this show, Mark, because we love that about professional wrestling, right? You got to pull
exposing the business.
Well,
TIW Unreal. That's what we're doing over here.
It's not exposing it. It's more about Mark, sent the message back and was like, shoot, man, I'm busy, but I definitely want to come on. And I'm kind of like, look, we're going live. It's WrestleMania week. You got a show coming up on Friday night. We want you on this week because you are the very first guest of a live This Is Wrestling show. And as we sort of branch out into Ottawa Sports Now and the OSN network getting going, it's been going for a little bit, but it's going to have a little bit of a push here with the Ottawa Senators making the playoffs. It's about time we put C4 and wrestling right beside the big sports here in Ottawa. So that's what we wanted to accomplish. Maybe first, just talk to people about why C4 has been so successful. I mean, we're just got Ethan here in the chat already that said, I've never been to C4. I should go. And right away, somebody else started us Tesla in the chat, was like, best $35 you're ever going to spend. And I mean, that's fantastic. Why has C4 risen to this level, Mark?
It's a big question. But I think so when I ran my first show almost 20 years ago, first C4 show was November 2007, which means we have an anniversary coming up.
That's crazy.
Sooner than later it's going to mark a big milestone in my life. And that's where my 20s and 30s went. And now my early 40s. But anyways, back when I started C4 is in 2007, one of the first things when I booked the Knights of Columbus on MacArthur, I said, it can't just be one date. I need a follow-up date. I need to give people something to look forward to. It's not just a one and done, because if you go to Ottawa Wrestling in 2007, there were several big one and dones or quick burnouts. And I knew at that time, consistency. To me, something that I've always felt is I want people to feel that their time has been valued. Their investment in coming to a show financially and time-wise is well invested, is well spent, and I'm not going to waste that. And that's why from day one it's been about consistency of product, consistency of people being able to know there's another show coming up. That has, and I've been very fortunate to have had great partner venues that have allowed me to book long term. And as I grew with C4, the scene in Ottawa really grew. And I'm very proud of what C4's part of that has been. Because again, when I started C4 in 2007, the scene left a lot to be desired. I mean, the indies of the early 2000s, you either had the work rate stuff that was out there that was not happening here, or you had a lot of, I don't even want to say old timers, but bitter folks from the 90s boom who never got a shot, who learned things one way, and then were frustrated when younger, different styles were coming out and coming about. And I know I got a lot of flack for when I started C4 with embracing those different styles. But anyways, I'm going all over the place. But yeah, to answer your question, consistency. I think that's how I've been able to build C4 to what others have said is one of the best indies in Canada. And that means a lot to me. And because, like I said, I wanted the talent who come through C4 to realize that their time is valued, and I want their experience to mean something.
Gonna put up a couple of quick comments here. Chris says, "Hello, Mark. Keep up the great work. I was lucky enough to have my bachelor party there with Lee and Zach was the only one that didn't dress up."
I recall that.
Well, I had a costume. I went to the Party City.
Stop. Come on.
It's true.
Like,
I have
nobody wants to hear this. Like, Chris was Rick goddamn Flair. I was the Painmaker Chris Jericho, which was, I showed pictures to people. It's like, this is what I did. And they're like, really? This is not great. But yeah, Ben was Mankind. It was fantastic. Matt Reisler, who doesn't live in Ottawa anymore, but still listens to the show, has been to a handful of wrestling shows, WWE included. C4 was the best, hands down. Thank you very much for that, Matt. And that's one of the things that I wanted to follow up with you there, Mark.
Yeah.
I think it's the consistency is certainly a part of this, but you've done an unbelievable job at catering to both the hardcore wrestling fan that wants to go and be involved in, following the wrestlers and following the storylines and making it all make sense with long-term storytelling. And then what I'll just call the other side of the guy or girl that just wants to go out on a Friday night and for $35 and have a couple of beers and go. I can't tell you the amount of people that I've come up with at the shows that go, I've never been here before. I don't know anything about their storylines. I don't know anything about the wrestlers, but holy crap, I am going to come back because this was awesome. So how do you, that merging of both of those crowds is something that not everybody can do. How have you done that?
I think that, I think it was either Brian Danielson or Tony Khan said in the last couple of years that really good wrestling will win people over. I've known that for years that let's say half the crowd comes to every show, and then the other half is a group of people who will come every few shows, or it's their first time, or they've come every 6 months or something. I know that thankfully we've built an audience that fills a decent amount of seats between those two. I've always focused on, I want to have a great in-ring product, because month to month, I don't want to say I've never, but I think that overarching storylines on indies are very difficult to do. We have storylines, but if, again, like you were saying, if you come to a show and you've never been to a show, you're not missing out because you don't know the intricacies of something that's been going on for a year and a half or a year. I think the balance is making sure first and foremost the in-ring product is incredibly strong, because that'll keep wrestling fans happy and the hardcore fans happy. And it will also leave the people who just came being like, holy shit, that was really cool. I'm going to tell my friends about it. That I saw these guys in Little Italy just doing crazy acrobatics or going through doors or just slapping the shit out of each other. I think it's a detriment when people overthink, especially indie wrestling. I know there's a quote out there from Paul Levesque this week about how difficult it is to book wrestling. Okay, let me reel that back. 8 hours of first run programming a week is ridiculous, and I don't think it should exist. But when it comes down to it, the wrestling part, for me, I've never found it to be difficult to put a focus on that and win people over through that. The quality now is much higher than it was when I started in 2007, but I still think I was always trying to focus on guys like Uno, Stu, Kevin, Generico, guys who'd never been Eddie Kingston missed our first show, actually, Blackout. But the Chicago guys like Hallowick and Larry Sweeney, just these guys who had never been in this area or weren't mixing it up with other talent, and just people will come out, they'll it's 3 hours of just really exciting wrestling, and they will leave talking about it. And the strongest thing we've ever had is word of mouth. Word of mouth is what will get people through the door. The hardest thing to me is to convince a T wrestling fan to come to C4. The hardest thing, it's it's incredibly frustrating when you see 5, 6, 7, 8,000 people go to a Scotiabank, and you're like, just
Right.
come take a chance, because I know if you do take that chance, you'll be back. And so those non-fans are the ones who will come out with no expectations and just be blown away and talk about it. So yeah, it's put on really good wrestling and not try and be an episode of Raw for an indie audience, because it doesn't work. It doesn't make sense for a monthly indie to do that. And look, there are people out there who do that, and more power to them if you can pull it off. I just have never thought pretending to be something that they can see any night of the week on television or online now is going to make them come out and have a unique experience.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, because you touched on, of course, in terms of, overarching storylines. You don't have too many, but you do have, storylines
Yeah,
that you
there are,
do.
yes.
In terms of, obviously you've been at it for a while now, and you're coming up to a big anniversary. We've seen down in the States some of the bigger indie promotions like a Deadlock and some of those bigger indies that are down there announcing that they were shutting down. They weren't able to move forward. What kind of keeps you motivated in your scene and saying, I want to continue to do? Because we've seen historically a lot of guys, I know, looking at it from, like, you talk about weekly television and whatnot, it's a much more a different pace.
Yeah.
But for you, what kind of keeps you motivated to keep being on the independent scene and keep booking C4, keep doing these shows?
There's no end game as an indie wrestling booker promoter. I'm not going to get a contract somewhere. I'm not chasing that. C4 is a part of, hopefully, some people's story and some people's journey. And being able to see people succeed, that's always, I think that's just, it's that whole enjoying the journey, and just being able to enjoy that aspect of it. I sorry, I'm just I think being part of the journey and being satisfied with what we have in Ottawa. Being satisfied with being a destination for both fans and talent. Early on, I ran shows in Montreal. That first year we ran a show in Petawawa. We were trying to experiment with other places. Once I realized that no, C4 is the destination, and make them come to you. Like I always thought I'd rather be a PWG than an ROH, for a very dated reference. And I also think that way it doesn't burn me out or burn Steve, my partner, out. It doesn't burn our crew out. Because we're not trying to be something we're not. We're just trying to be the best we are. And I like the Deadlock crew is amazing. And it sucks that they went out, but I think that it was just a lot of work what they were trying to do logistically, and they had very high standards, and nothing's getting less expensive. And if your margins are at such a place where theirs presumably were, it's not a lot of juice for the squeeze. Believe me, that's not the reason any of us do it. But it presumably gets very difficult. Prestige, I believe, was the other one that they just closed. It's just, I also think that the growing pains of C4, the first decade of it, I was able to do it at a much different part of my life than if I were to be like, I'm 42 years old and I'm gonna start a wrestling company. It was, I didn't have children. Um, I I didn't have the most stressful years of C4 were those early ones. Um, and once I got to a place and through those very challenging times, not to say things are easy now, but I have a much bigger support system. And I know there are certain aspects that I don't want to say run themselves, but I don't have to I don't have to worry so much about every little detail about renting the truck, getting to the venue, hoping maybe someone else is there, and just from top to bottom. So I think all that to say is where those companies started off at a very high level and we're just trying to hit the ground running, it's very difficult to maintain that. Whereas we've been fortunate enough to have 19 years now or 18 and a half years of a well-oiled machine to a degree.
Richard comes in and says, I thank you for your time, effort, struggles, and pain and perseverance. And he says, I give you your flowers.
Thank you very much. That's kind.
Um, I thought I would just shorten Zach's question to how do you continue to explain to your wife and children that all your time is taken up with.
Well, it's not all my time anymore.
Yeah.
Fortunately, it's not all my time. Whereas 20 years ago or 15 years ago, it was all my time. Now I feel I've done my 10,000 hours kind of thing with the booking, and I'm able to. It's constantly evolving all the time, but I don't want to say the stresses aren't there because I'm stressed about certain things, but I feel confident in my abilities now and our crew's abilities that I have a great team.
Yeah. That you can overcome a lot of what's thrown at you. Now.
Yeah. So it's not so much, it's not like all my time. This is C4 has always been something at the end of the day I do for fun. That's what it is.
And I wanted to ask you, is it still fun for you at the end of the day with all of the minutia and the details and the stress that comes with, people showing up and people being there and being paid, and all of the different things that would take the fun away from it? Do you still get that satisfaction out of it?
I definitely do. And I wouldn't do it if I didn't. I think there was a part of me for many years that was like, if I'm not stressed, I'm doing it wrong, and I should walk away if I'm not stressed. Thankfully, I think I've gone through that mindset, but being able to understand that some people's highlight of their month is going to a C4 show, not to speak too highly, but some people that's their favorite thing, and that means a lot. And I'm just able to, very rarely I'm able to, but I do enjoy being able to stand back and just watch a match that I've been excited to book or see how an angle is going to be pulled off. The live reaction from an audience is very exciting to me, and that's something that probably keeps me going selfishly with that.
To be able to run a show, you're running a show as we sit here on a Tuesday night. You're running a show in 3 days in Ottawa on WrestleMania weekend. That tells me, with a lot of a million indie events going on in Vegas, but that tells me that you are successful because you're going to be able to pull off a show on a Friday night in Ottawa that there's so many people that are just unavailable. I'm sure. What has gone into putting a show on, and why did you decide to run a show this weekend in Ottawa?
Well, I mean, I booked I usually book dates a year in advance. And at the time I probably did not do my due diligence to realize it was Mania weekend, but I wanted to avoid Easter. I want to avoid Victoria Day weekend, and that sets you on a certain schedule when you're trying to lock down dates.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I know last year, one date we actually canceled was going to be the Friday before Elimination Chamber in Toronto, because for that I felt it would have been very difficult talent-wise, because I'm sure a lot of people would have been in that area trying to get their photos backstage in suits with the WWE logo. I think outside of a few shows, Mania weekend in the Mania host city is not what it once was in terms of people being able to go there and get their big break. If you have an opportunity to go down there for a reason, I think it makes sense, especially going down to the States right now as a whole, and that's a whole other conversation. But I thought when I decided to keep the date, I knew I'd be without a few people, and I think that has led me to also overcompensate with bringing in some people I've never brought in before, bringing back Dijak, or bringing in Nicole Matthews for the first time, or Alex Reynolds with Dark Order, bring him in. So unfortunately, yeah, I had to book certain things with people who weren't going to be around. But there's a whole lot of people who will be around, and I'm excited. I think a lot of people who stuck around, who aren't making the pilgrimage to Vegas worker wise, believed in being on a C4 show would be just as valuable to their time. I know there's more than a handful of fans who probably won't be around. That bums me out, but people are gonna support TKO no matter what, I suppose.
I had to actually tell Zach before the show, in our WrestleMania show, you can't be sarcastic, because we gotta cover them a little bit, like on
Sure,
one
no, they're the industry leader.
on 1 week of the year where we can't just make fun of them the entire time. But I think this,
You know how hard it is to not be sarcastic about that? That's very, very tough.
the state of that company right now is very hard to get behind, and I think that it allows us to be able to look for other things. And I'm sure you get this all the time, like people looking for alternatives and finding it in places like yours.
And I'm sure at the end of the day, if this recent boom that I feel we're probably nearing the end of has made new fans through WWE's popularity, hopefully a handful of them will be looking interested in seeing what's in their own backyard. Or they'll hear, oh, Kevin Owens wrestled in Ottawa, like he was in C4. So or Danhausen was in Ottawa last summer. Like these things, you hope that, like, I know I would have been all over this when I was 13, 14. And I hope there's other fans are that interested in learning about what's out there.
I could tell you when I first started going to C4 shows, was now a little over 10 years ago. The Harder They Come was my first C4 show.
Yeah.
And that's when I learned about guys like Speedball Mike Bailey. Joey Janela was on that show, I believe. And afterwards it's like, oh, guys like Swerve Strickland came through C4, and remember Keith Lee as well. So I think it's one of those deals too that you mentioned where I don't think people realize just some of the names that have gone through. You do your due diligence to try and find guys, not just obviously here locally, but also try and match them up with some name guys to try and create unique matchups for your promotion.
Well, I mean, going back to when I started C4, my idea was always to give the best locals an opportunity to work with the best from other areas. And when I first started, that wasn't including flights, but that would be like carload from Toronto, some cards from Montreal, a Shakara carload, or just these guys from the Northeast US, and just to give the opportunity for people to work with people they never would have had that chance to do otherwise. That whole concept of iron sharpening iron, like people are only get better if they work with better people. And the trap that many indies locally especially got into were just they work the same fellow students every show, and oh, maybe we'll bring a name in there on top, they're working each other. And that nobody grows from that. Nobody gets better. You're not and that goes back to the trying to grow the way the scene is growing, is because, again, it's not that I have ego, but I recognize what I've done is you give these people the opportunity to get better in their own backyard, and you give them a chance to network with other people coming through. And then hopefully that leads to them leaving the city and not just working in an hour radius from their home. Part of like something I know I've said many times over the years to talent is like, I want it to be hard to book you. I want you to be so busy that you'll have to see if you can fit C4 in. Because again, that goes back to the journey, and that goes back to meaning I've done my job as a booker and promoter correctly, that people have gotten better from their time being here. And yeah, I just think far too many. It's totally fine if an indie just wants to be, let's put on a show and have a good time. That's fine. But I've always wanted C4 to matter. That's what it comes down to, because my time that I'm investing, and I want to make sure everyone else's time is valued. I want it to matter to whatever story of the universe is out there. I'd like it to mean something.
And I related a little bit because I was a massive ECW mark like during the time, and I would drive to Buffalo to see it. I would drive to Pittsburgh to see it. I would trade tapes to make sure I was up on the weekly stuff before the internet even came along. It mattered, and it felt like the people in the building, it mattered to them. And I guess that's what I wanted to ask you. What do you think some of the bigger names say about C4 when they leave? Do you think they go and tell other people about it?
I don't know. I hope I hope they and it goes back to that whole thing. I hope they thought it was worthwhile, and I hope they speak highly of their experience. And I know I do hear from people. It's much easier now because they've heard of C4 to reach out to people and get responses and work things out. And yeah, word gets out there, and word gets around. So I'd like to think people always have good thoughts about their time. I've like, that's something I've worked very hard at personally, is I wanted C4 to be, like I always said, I want the locker room to be like an asshole free place. I want it's not about egos. And I remember at one point, if you guys are familiar with the John Wick movies, with the Continental, the hotel, like, I don't care what happens outside of these doors, but when you're in the locker room here, you're all here for C4, and you're here working together. And I don't want any bitching or anything. And I think we've done a great job at not having people who are just bitter or angry or just want to fight with each other. I think the locker room's a good place, and I think that means something. And I think that when you're coming in for the first time, you can enjoy yourself the time you're there.
Is there thoughts of expansion at all with you, or do you like where you are?
I'm content. Like, I think it's like, I'm so happy with the mystery crew, and I'm so happy with what Uno and them have been able to do, because I think a lot of that is cashing it in on Uno's 20 years of hard work as a talent, and the limited TV time he's gotten. He's been able to build a reputation. Now they're going to run shows probably in a lot of major markets globally in the coming year. I think that's terrific for them. And I don't see that, like, that's not what C4 is. I don't see I don't see a need for an expanded C4, if that makes sense. Because most major markets have a really good wrestling company. Most anyways. And the idea of spreading that doesn't necessarily make sense to me. Just like like I've had people like, why don't you try and get on TV? Well, I don't think TV in 2026, unless you're one of the big two companies, actually makes a difference. Um, I, ju- I'm happy with where we are, to answer your question.
Yeah.
Um, I'm always, I'd always wish more people would want to come out. I wish the shows would sell out quicker. I wish that like I have those wishes. Um, I'd love to run like for our 20th anniversary in about a year and a half. I have ideas of what I'd like to do for that and to do something a little bit bigger. Um, but expansion beyond the level where I'd rather have a packed 450 to 600 people at the Preston every show than either go to an arena and have, okay, maybe 700 people in a place that holds, in this city, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000. And what does that do for you? Or touring, which is not something I'm interested in doing. And that's amazing for a GCW who's been able to pull it off in this day and age, running shows every weekend in different cities and states. But that's just not, like what I said earlier. I do see C4 is something I do for fun. It's a creative outlet for me. It's something that me and a great team of collaborators are able to have ideas that we can see play out in front of an amazing crowd and get a reaction from and feel fulfilled from that. Um, yeah, and then being able to use that and run Fighting Back every summer and turn that into what we've turned that into. We've I'm very proud of the community. Like I go back to that. I'm very proud of the community we've built.
Is that your biggest? I was just going to ask about Fighting Back and
Yeah.
what that means to you, and how much you gear towards that every year uh, in August before kind of your season starts.
Yeah.
And I don't think some people know that, which I love the idea of a season, that you have sort of the beginning of a season, you have the kind of the end of the season, you have a break, you have your Fighting Back card. Maybe take people through it, because we're so used to, 52 weeks a year. Like they always talk about. I even heard them bitching on Unreal. Like, I expect us to book Backlash when we got WrestleMania and Raw, and like it just never ever stops. You actually have a season, and I love that about C4.
I think when I first started, there was this idea that shows don't draw in the summer. So I mean, that's just, shows don't draw when it snows. Shows don't draw when it rains. It's one of those things they realize is just bullshit. But
You've had a snowstorm every Friday night. You've had the show in the winter anyway this year.
yeah. So yeah, and those have been the best attended shows we've had in years. So I think that the season thing was when I was starting out. It was just, I can't I need a break. I don't want to just do it nonstop every month. And I just want to be able to have, at that time it was, let's take the summers off. Then I switched that when Frank got sick to, let's make the most stressful show of the year be right in the middle of that break. but,
Yeah.
but it does let me, like, Fighting Back is canon, but it's also like you can sort of set it aside from everything else that you've gone through September to June with. Um, which it just also makes it easier to figure things out and to plan things out and to be able to say, well, we're doing this here to build to this there, and that's constantly changing anyways. But it just I like the structure, just being able to do a 8 or 9 show season, and we still do get a break in there, because usually from the end of November till mid-January is a stretch without a show, and that's a nice break in there. And also not having to contest with some of the worst weather of the year, but again, this year has been different. But yeah, seasons, it also gives the fans a break, because like I said before, so many of them are, people will come every show, but the majority or close to it don't come to every show. And going back to what we talked about earlier about what gets people coming back, what gets people involved. That's to make them feel like, okay, if I miss a show, I'm not totally out of the loop. I can jump back in whenever and more or less be able to pick it back up. So if it's just like monthly, nonstop, no beginning, no end, it's like, well, where do you jump in? Where do you? So I think as being able to have those points of, okay, well, we start in September. November's our anniversary show usually. January's the first show of the new year. March is usually a big one, just the way stories progress. They'll usually be a big moment in March. And April, May is like we're heating things up towards the season finale in June. It also just lets my mind wrap around things easier to when I'm booking things, to have a structure, because it's not a writer's room. It's not all that stuff. It's me and spreadsheets and me talking with talent and figuring things out, and then collaborating in person at the shows themselves.
I love the concept of the long-term storytelling, that you can tell a story from September to June if that's what you want to do, and have it wrap up, and then people get to have a break and then think, okay, there's a new season. It's like a new season of whatever's coming out on your favorite show, that you get a break and then the new season comes out and you're excited to watch the new season. I love that concept.
It's it's worked pretty well in television across the board for how many decades, right? So and it also lets you play with that structure sometimes too, because when Junior dropped the belt to Uno on that season premiere show 2 years ago, I remember hearing you guys after fighting back talking about, oh, well, Uno's not going to win it. And then it's just like, well, I know what we got in store. It's going to be something different. We're going to do something fun.
The one time we made a bad remark about this, we think we know what's going on. He remembers, Zach. He remembers.
Yeah.
But yeah,
but no, I love that. We were just talking about AEW, about my prediction card was like completely wrong on Sunday night, but I love that.
I mean, I wish Kenny won, but whatever. Anyway, the fan in me is like, I just give it to Kenny. But Jericho and Edge and Cope and Christian can lose, whatever. I'm good with that.
Yeah. but just the idea of that. Okay, you've spent an incredible amount of time with us. I want you to tell us about the show on coming up again on Friday, and how people go about getting tickets for your event, whether it's Friday or beyond.
Yeah. Most of the tickets are sold online through Eventbrite for this show, c4frenzy.eventbrite.com. Tickets are there. There's still some front rows available. I blame the folks who've headed to Vegas who've left those seats vacant. But yeah, or if you're in town and want physical tickets, Vertigo Records on Bank Street, Odds and Sods on Baseline. Having physical tickets is important to me, and there are still people who like picking them up that way. I'm excited for this show. It's the first one we've had that we're headlining with the Women's C4 Championship, which will be Alexi Nicole defending against Drea Mitchell. We've got the first time teaming up in Ottawa as the Dark Order with Evil Luna with Alex Reynolds together, taking on the Blade and Mathieu St. Jacques, who have quite the history. Donovan Dijak's in town for the first time. 2 years ago, I brought him in right after he was released for fighting back, and we're finally got him back. He's working Hot Stepper, McRae and Martin, which I think will be a very good opportunity for McRae. Miracle Generation's coming back, and they're working Project 8100. I'm very excited. We got Nicole Matthews coming in, who's just Canadian indie, like such an important figure in Canadian indie wrestling and women's wrestling in the indies over the last 15 years. She was in Shimmer. She's someone who's been around everywhere, and I'm really glad to have her come in. She's working Christara. Tag title match with Northern Thunder, London, and Storm against Violence is Forever, against the newly crowned champions, the Rogues of Elliot Tyler and Casey Ferreira. Just announced last night is Gabriel Fuerza versus Young Jay Lee versus Scrapper James Stone. And there's a couple more announcements coming up in the next day or two. But yeah, just make this week less stressful for me and buy tickets, please. You guys don't have to leave it until Wednesday night or Thursday.
Speaking of which, Richard says how they handle last minute walk ups. Do they have or save tickets at the door usually?
It depends. It depends on priest. I'm pretty certain we'll have tickets at the door for the show. But yeah, the last two shows, both January and March, had basically a 2 month or a 6 week, 7 week stretch without a show before them at the Preston, which led to sales basically for 2 months selling. So they both sold out. This show, because it's a quicker turnaround, there's tickets available. They will be available at the door, but you can buy anytime in advance at Vertigo, at Odds and Sods, or at C4
Right.
Frenzy.eventbrite.com until Friday around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And then whatever is left will be available at the door. General at the door is $40.
Right. And Matt says, I collect physical tickets for the events I've been to. I love that you still have them. And I appreciate that too. It's a little detail that would mean a lot to somebody like me and Matt.
No, I love physical media in general. Like the shelves behind me are all like 4Ks and Blu-rays. So I love that. And I love encouraging people to go to a place like a Vertigo Records or an Odds and Sods shop, which are both physical media stores, and to get a physical ticket. Like, I think it's a fun memory to have. I mean, I still sell Blu-rays of shows. So it's like that aspect means something to me when everything is so easy to get digitally. Just we do have fans who like just getting that physical ticket and holding on to it. And it's something I some months where it's less than normal for them to be selling that, I'm like, should I still do it? But I'm like, yeah, some people just prefer it that way, and I'm going to keep doing it that way.
Well, we love the fact that you prefer to keep the events in Ottawa and keep them at the Preston. And it's an amazing, like I said, Mark, I'm not blowing smoke here. Every time I go, and I usually see 2 or 3 people that I haven't run into in a while, and they're always like, this is my first show. You told me about this 5 years ago, and I didn't listen to you, but I'm so glad that I came now because I'll be back.
Oh,
That's what
yes.
like everyone says. And
Yeah.
it's
The
like,
amount of people when we used to work at Bell Media and they'd be like, I went to the show and you guys were right. Like, this is so cool. It's so cool. It was mind-boggling the amount of times it's happened when we worked there.
No, yeah, I've said for a long time, there's 2 types of people in Ottawa: C4 fans and those who haven't been yet. Like,
okay.
you
Yeah.
don't have to be a wrestling fan. Just come out and you'll have fun. And if you are a wrestling fan, it's even more rewarding because you actually know what's going on and you actually understand it all. And it's not just some crazy shit you're seeing in front of you happen, but it works on
Right.
both levels. And that again, that word of mouth, I appreciate both of you spreading the word, because and what you've done on the show for years, it means a lot. And it means a lot to know that it exists beyond those doors, that those memories live with people, that they'll talk about, they'll rewatch the shows on IWTV or whatever. It means a lot that again, going back to what we do matters in some small way.
And just to drive that point home, I mean, we've been fortunate, gotten to know some of the guys, but man, I sit here and I watch London Lightning in a match with FTR, and I'm like, man, this is so cool. Like, it's just so cool for a guy like that, and you see the growth and you see the development, and not to get too into it here, but like one of my true loves was junior hockey. And the reason I love junior hockey is because you see the raw talent, but they're not developed yet. And you watch the development along the way. And then when they get there, it's an incredible feeling. You must have that all the time. And when like I literally watch London Lightning with FTR or in there with Roderick Strong going, this is incredible. Like I think that's just an amazing part. And that's what people can experience when they go there. It's like, okay, I now know who this person is. I'm a little bit invested in them. And then all of a sudden they see them somewhere else. And like, yeah, I know that guy. I want to follow that guy. And I think it lends a lot of credibility back to what you're building.
I think that, like I said, it's being part of that journey. Like, everyone in that building is a part of someone's journey, and that's really cool. And I cannot give enough praise to what Uno and Stu and Cecil and everybody involved with the Keep has done. because that's something I always wanted to do locally, was have a school, but I just didn't have it in me. And there just weren't the opportunities to do it. And the when I look back 15 years ago, sometimes when I'd be there with a rental truck with one other person and trying to put up the ring by ourselves, and then it's the scene is a lot better for having a great school like we do locally, and being able to have local talents who are coming out of that school. um it's just made everything so much better, so you're able to see people on that journey from a much earlier time, but also see them achieve things much quicker than I think a generation ago would have had. Like it took Uno and Stu until 2019 before they got a contract somewhere, right? Like there's the opportunity, like there's more opportunities now for that sort of thing. And that's just a bigger thing about the wrestling landscape for 20 years in North America. But um yeah, I think locally we have something very good, and we have a very deep roster of talented people. Um and like I keep going back to, a community, a great community that's been built up. And I think it's the journey that we get to see them on. I think it's something special that we're seeing a lot of people who hopefully will have a lot of success in the years to come.
You know what's going to happen, Zach? What's going to happen is Mark is going to remember this interview in a while and go, you know what? I remember when those OSN guys, they were starting something up, and then it got big, and I was there at the beginning of the journey. I was
Right.
there.
Yes.
um, because this is wrestling is going to be a part of OSN, and Zach and I, we've been doing the show for
Yeah.
how long, Zach? 7 years now.
We started in late 2019, so before the pandemic,
Okay,
and
there
here
you
we
go.
are, 2026. So
And here we are. So
Congratulations.
here we are.
yeah, we love it though, and we just love talking wrestling. And I think we are better in the community for having somebody like you, because it matters to you. It then matters to other people, and you have to have that person first to have it matter to them to make something like this possible. So thank you, I think, from all the wrestling fans that continue to come. And we're going to be talking about C4. Word of mouth will be a lot more come the OSN brand, Mark.
Thank you very
And
much.
I can promise you that there won't be too many negative things, other than when Zach wants his own spot and chair on the balcony. We'll have to
Oh.
talk about that. But Mark Pollesel, the head of C4, thank you so much. Apologize for taking up so much
It's
of
all
your
good.
time, but this has been tremendous, and we will
Thank
be
you.
making sure that people know about Friday night and all the big shows that are coming up.
Thank
And we
you.
look
Thank you
forward
very
to
much.
talking to you and some of the wrestlers a little bit down the line.
Definitely. Thanks for having me.
Hey,
Thanks,
thanks
Mark.
for coming on, Mark.
Bye, guys.
There goes Mark Pollesel, the head of C4. That was way longer than I thought it was going to be,
Yep.
but we'll see if he ever comes back. I
Yeah, he
don't-
might have used all of his material here, and he's like, all right, no, I mean, I'll tell you this when it comes to Mark. So even before this is wrestling, I've known Mark when I was doing a wrestling with ideas for my college radio show.
Yep.
And so I've known him for quite a while, and he is somebody that, like, it's amazing to me that even 10 years later, I still hear that passion for the industry and still following along. Like, he was talking about stuff that was happening on AEW and WWE and still following along. So many times you hear about people that are in indie wrestling where they're like, I can't really watch a lot of the main roster stuff. I'm kind of staying in this bubble. So it's one of the things where it's like he's still following everything and keeping himself plugged in. And so,
He just loves it.
it's great. And also too, like, he's been somebody that, when we moved on from the other platform to where we're at now over to OSN, he was one of the first people that reached out and said, sorry to hear this is happening, but have sports, and always appreciated the coverage of the C4 shows. And that was one of the things when we started this podcast, like, we wanted to have that local coverage, because C4 has just been like, it has been for a time when I was living in Ottawa, I think I went to almost every single C4 show from 2016 to when I moved in 2022. So it was great to have Mark on.
Matt says, thank you, Mark, and excellent interview. And Richard says, I discovered you guys on the radio while Ubering. Fantastic.
There you go.
Yeah, so that was awesome. And man, when he wants to share, he's really incredible to listen to, right? Because how many people have done what Mark's done?
Not a lot.
Right?
Especially in wrestling. Like, it's very hard to stay in the indie scene for that long. Like, there's so many times. It's just crazy. Like, he's been there for so long, closing on 20 years, right? Like, that's unheard of on the independent scene. It's to still have that passion.
The indie wrestling scene, and 20 years later is still running that same indie scene.
Yeah.
Like,
crazy.
it just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen.